The Galactic Union prided itself on understanding warfare. For millennia, its council had overseen the balance of power between species, enforcing treaties, regulating conflicts, and studying the evolution of combat across the known universe. Every species had limits, biological, psychological, or technological. The purpose of the Union's latest initiative was to catalog these limits, to understand how far each race could be pushed before it broke. Humans were a relatively new addition to the galactic stage. Their technology was primitive compared to the oldest spacefaring races, but their rapid adaptation to interstellar combat was unsettling. Unlike most species who evolved strict survival instincts that triggered retreat at the first sign of critical damage, humans seemed to have no such mechanism. The Union sought to test this theory in a controlled environment. Lieutenant Perry stepped onto the artificial battlefield, his combat armor dull and scuffed from previous engagements. He had been chosen as the human representative in today's simulation against the Tzur, a species with one of the most efficient combat doctrines in the galaxy. The Tzur were insectoid in appearance, standing taller than the average human, their exoskeletal plating reinforced by natural biometal. Their strength lay in precise strikes and calculated withdrawals, relying on an innate biological ability to assess injury and retreat before sustaining irreparable damage. They fought to win, but they fought smart. When the odds turned against them, they knew when to disengage. The Union's observation deck overlooked the combat arena, where high-ranking officers from various species gathered to witness the experiment. Among them was Commander Kavax of the Qatari, a species renowned for its tactical prowess. Kavax had personally studied human battle reports, but numbers on a datapad were one thing. Seeing one of them fight in real time was another. The arena's artificial terrain simulated an urban battlefield, with ruined structures, collapsed walls, and scattered debris. The exercise was simple. Perry would engage a Tzuric warrior in live combat, with weapons set to non-lethal mode, replicating real damage without causing death. The goal was to determine how long each combatant could fight before reaching their biological threshold and shutting down. The Tzuric soldier, clad in lightweight armor designed for speed, clicked its mandibles in anticipation. Its kind had fought in wars across countless worlds, refining their combat efficiency to perfection. A human, with all his biological flaws, would be a mere inconvenience. The signal to begin flared in the air, a sharp pulse of blue light. The Tzuric moved first, a blur of motion as it darted between cover, assessing its opponent. Perry didn't flinch. His posture remained relaxed, but his stance was firm, steady, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. The Tzuric attacked in a flash, its twin energy blades slicing through the air. Perry reacted instantly, ducking low, dodging the first strike, then raising his rifle to fire a burst. The insectoid warrior twisted mid-motion, avoiding the shots with an unnatural agility. But Perry had expected that. He shifted, rolling behind a slab of broken concrete, his movements crisp and practiced. From the observation deck, Kavax narrowed his eyes. The human's reaction time was fast, but that wasn't what concerned him. It was the way he moved. He wasn't just dodging, he was adapting. Every motion, every maneuver was calculated, adjusting to the Tzuric's patterns within seconds. The duel intensified. The Tzuric soldier managed to land a glancing strike along Perry's side, the energy blade simulating a deep wound. Any other species would have faltered, even with a simulated injury. Pain, even when artificial, was a powerful deterrent. It forced hesitation, slowed reflexes. He pivoted, delivering a brutal elbow to the Tzuric's head, then followed up with a precise shot to its lower limb. The insectoid warrior staggered, clicking in confusion. It had anticipated human endurance, but this was something else entirely. The human should have slowed down. He should have acknowledged the injury, yet Perry only moved faster. The alien spectators murmured among themselves. Even among the most battle-hardened species, there were limits. Neural shock responses, chemical shutdowns, genetic safeguards, all biological fail-safes meant to preserve life. Humans? It seemed they had none. The Tezuric adjusted its strategy, launching a feint before lunging at Perry's injured side. The move was designed to trigger a defensive reaction, force the human to expose a weakness. Instead, Perry took the hit deliberately. He twisted his body into the attack, absorbing the impact with a grimace, but using the momentum to get within close range. His combat knife was already in his hand. Before the Tezuric could react, Perry drove the blade into a weak joint between its plating. The insectoid warrior collapsed, its neural system momentarily shutting down from the simulated lethal hit. Silence fell over the observation deck. Commander Kevex exhaled slowly. "By the void," he muttered. Perry stepped back, rolling his shoulder where the simulated wound had landed. His breathing was steady, focused. He looked up at the observation deck, locking eyes with the gathered officers. There was no arrogance in his gaze, no pride, just a simple, undeniable truth. He would have kept fighting. The realization hit the alien spectators all at once. Humans didn't just resist pain. They ignored it. They didn't stop when they were hurt. They didn't retreat when they were outmatched. They fought until they won. And in war, that was terrifying. The debriefing room was silent. The high-ranking officers from various species sat in rigid postures, their expressions a mix of disbelief and unease. The Galactic Union prided itself on understanding warfare, but today it had encountered something outside its expectations. The human, Lieutenant Perry, had displayed a trait that defied logic. Commander Kevex, a veteran strategist of the Qatari, leaned forward, his claws tapping against the smooth surface of the table. His species was known for its meticulous planning, its ability to anticipate enemy behavior and adapt accordingly. And yet, what he had witnessed today left him with an unsettling realization. He could not predict how far a human would go. Across from him, General Orex of the Tezura remained motionless. His exoskeletal plates shifted slightly, a nervous twitch that betrayed his unease. His warrior had fallen, not due to a lack of skill, but because of a fundamental miscalculation. The Tezura had assumed the human would react like any other species, hesitate, falter, prioritize self-preservation. Instead, Perry had thrown himself into an injury as if it meant nothing. The silence in the room stretched on until the Union's presiding officer, an elder from the Verkai species, cleared his throat. His voice, a deep, resonating hum, filled the chamber. "What we have observed today raises questions," he said, his gaze sweeping across the gathered officers. This was a controlled exercise, yet the human soldier continued fighting beyond reasonable thresholds. "We must consider the implications." Kevex exhaled slowly. "Implications?" he echoed. "I believe we've just learned that humans have none." Orex shifted, his mandibles clicking. He should have shut down. The neural feedback from the simulated wound was calibrated to trigger an incapacitation response. "Then either the calibration was incorrect," Kevex replied, his voice sharp, "or humans are built differently than we assumed." The Verkai elder turned his gaze to the Union's lead scientist, a Zolari named Dr. Vezik. The Zolari were a species known for their cold, logical approach to research. If anyone could provide an answer, it was him. Dr. Vezik adjusted his posture, his elongated fingers tapping at the holographic console before him. A display materialized in the air, filled with streams of data recorded from the simulation. "Lieutenant Perry's pain response was measured throughout the engagement," he began. "As you can see, the expected threshold for neural inhibition was exceeded multiple times, and yet no shutdown occurred. His adrenaline levels spiked, but rather than inducing fatigue, they contributed to heightened aggression and increased physical performance." The room remained silent as he continued. "Humans appear to lack the biological fail-safes present in most known species. Where other organisms reach a point of self-preservation, where pain signals trigger retreat or unconsciousness, humans continue forward." The Verkai elder frowned. "Are you suggesting they do not feel pain?" Dr. Vezik shook his head. "No, they feel it. We have extensive records of human biology confirming this. The difference is how they react to it. He tapped another command, pulling up comparative data. Most species have neural pathways that prioritize survival. When pain reaches a critical threshold, the brain initiates a shutdown to prevent further damage. Humans, however, have a different response. Their bodies react by producing more adrenaline, allowing them to override physical distress. Orcs leaned forward. That means they fight, even when they should not. Dr. Vezek nodded. Correct. They will push beyond what is logical, beyond what is safe. The weight of that statement settled over the room. A species that did not stop fighting, that did not retreat when wounded. It was a terrifying thought. Kavex exhaled, his claws tightening against the table. And what happens when they take damage beyond their limits? Surely there must be a point where they collapse. Dr. Vezek hesitated before answering. There is, he admitted, but by the time they reach it, the damage is usually... A long silence followed. The implications were clear. Humans did not stop. They fought until they physically could not continue, and by then they were often too damaged to be saved. A species like that did not just endure war. It defined war. The Verkai elder steepled his fingers. If this is the case, then we must consider what this means for future engagements. We have allowed humans to participate in controlled combat trials under the assumption that they adhere to the same biological laws as the rest of us. His gaze darkened. That assumption was incorrect. Ori's mandibles twitched. We may need to reevaluate our military strategies if we were to engage them in actual warfare. Kavex cut him off with a sharp wave of his hand. No, engaging them would be a mistake. You do not fight an enemy that does not know when to stop. You negotiate, you find alternatives. His gaze flickered toward the display screen, where Perry's recorded battle still played in a loop. Because if you back a species like that into a corner, they will fight until there is nothing left. Dr. Vezek's voice was quiet, but the weight of his words pressed into the room. This was one soldier, one human. We have no reason to believe he is an exception. The thought sent a ripple of unease through the assembled officers. If all humans shared this trait, if this level of relentless endurance was standard among their warriors, then the Galactic Union had miscalculated in ways that could not be undone. The Verkai elder sighed, his expression heavy with the weight of new knowledge. We will reconvene tomorrow. For now, I suggest we all take time to consider what we have learned. As the officers slowly filed out of the chamber, Kavax remained seated, his mind still turning over the events of the day. Humans had been an enigma since their arrival on the galactic stage. Unpredictable, adaptable, reckless. But now, he understood something far more dangerous about them. They did not have an off switch, and that made them the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. The corridors of the Galactic Union training facility hummed with low ambient light. Tension hung thick in the air as officers and scientists moved with an uncharacteristic urgency. Discussions took place in hushed tones. Data was exchanged at an accelerated pace, and classified reports were updated with alarming conclusions. Something fundamental had shifted in the Union's understanding of warfare, and it centered around humanity. Deep within the facility, a new combat trial was being prepared. This time, the stakes were higher. Sergeant Vasquez adjusted the straps on her armor, rolling her shoulders to loosen the tightness in her muscles. She stood alone in the briefing chamber, her helmet tucked under one arm. The weight of what was coming pressed against her, but she embraced it. A fight was a fight. It didn't matter whether it was against humans or aliens. The door behind her slid open with a soft hiss. An auxiliary scientist stepped inside, his elongated form moving with a nervous precision. Dr. Vezek regarded her with the same calculating gaze he gave every subject he studied. His kind did not waste words on unnecessary pleasantries. The parameters of today's trial have changed, he said. His voice was smooth, neutral, but there was something beneath it, an edge of caution. Vasquez smirked. Let me guess. Bigger opponent? Vezek's lips pressed together in a thin line. Your opponent will be a Vorka champion, the highest-ranking warrior in their caste. The smirk faded. That was unexpected. Vork warriors were already infamous for their raw strength and brutal combat efficiency, but a champion? That was another level entirely. A single one could tear through squads of trained soldiers in direct engagement. Their bone structure was denser, their reflexes enhanced by generations of genetic refinement, and their fighting style was relentless. She nodded once, adjusting her gloves. All right, sounds fun. Vizik hesitated before speaking again. The Union wants a decisive result. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. Meaning? He folded his hands behind his back. Meaning the simulation is not designed for surrender or stalemates. She let that sink in. The Union had seen enough. They wanted proof. They wanted to see just how far a human would go when faced with overwhelming force. She inhaled slowly, steadying herself. Understood. The scientist gave a single nod before stepping aside, allowing her to exit toward the arena. The combat chamber was massive, its walls lined with reinforced alloy. A large circular platform rose in the center, illuminated by the artificial glow of overhead lights. High above, behind an observation barrier, Union officials gathered, their attention locked on the battlefield. Her opponent was already waiting. The Vorka champion towered over her, standing well above 8 feet, his thick plated skin gleaming under the lights. His armor was minimal, designed for movement rather than protection. He did not need it. His kind relied on sheer endurance and overwhelming force. His eyes, slitted and cold, tracked her as she stepped onto the platform. Vasquez exhaled through her nose. The moment the signal flashed, she moved. The champion was fast, far faster than something of his size should have been. He lunged, his clawed hands swinging in a powerful arc meant to crush through anything in his path. She ducked low, rolling to the side just in time to feel the force of the strike pass inches from her head. The impact against the ground sent a shockwave rippling through the platform. She came up on her feet and fired. Her rifle spat out precise, rapid bursts aimed at the joints and exposed weak spots. The shot struck, but the champion barely flinched. His thick hide absorbed most of the kinetic energy, his muscles flexing as he shrugged off the attack. Then he was on her again. This time, she couldn't dodge entirely. A massive arm slammed into her side, lifting her off the ground and sending her crashing against the wall of the arena. Pain exploded through her ribs, but she gritted her teeth and forced herself to move before he could close the gap again. She hit the ground, rolled, and was back on her feet in a blink. The champion paused for half a second, tilting his head. Any other opponent, even among the strongest species, would have required a moment to recover. She did not. She was already moving, already adapting. He snarled and came at her again, his movements blurring with unnatural speed. This time, she met him head-on. She ducked under another crushing blow and drove her knee into his midsection, following it up with a brutal strike to the throat. The attack forced a grunt from him, but he countered instantly, grabbing her by the arm and hurling her across the arena. She landed hard, her vision flashing with white-hot pain, but the moment she hit the ground, she was already pushing herself up. The champion hesitated. His species did not hesitate. The realization was clear. He had just felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt, she grinned, wiping blood from her mouth. Come on, big guy. That all you got? A growl rumbled from his chest, deep and guttural. His muscles tensed, and this time, he attacked with everything he had. The battle became a blur of movement, strikes, counterstrikes, dodges, and impacts. Each hit she took should have slowed her down. It didn't. Each injury she sustained should have worn her out. It didn't. The alien observers above watched in growing unease. The champion had begun the fight with confidence, but now he was starting to make mistakes. His strikes became more erratic, his movements more desperate. Vasquez was covered in bruises, cuts, and blood. But she kept coming. She never stopped. Then the moment came. The champion overextended, just slightly. But it was enough. She twisted, dodging under his arm, and drove her combat knife deep into the gap between his plated ribs. A roar of pain erupted from him as she followed through, twisting the blade before ripping it free. The champion staggered. Then, for the first time in his life, he collapsed. The arena was silent. Vasquez stood over him, her breathing heavy, her hands covered in blood. She looked up at the observation deck, at the gathered officers and scientists, at their expressions of shock and disbelief. She wiped the blade against her armor and sheathed it. Then she turned and walked away without a word. Up in the observation deck, Kavax exhaled slowly. "By the void," he murmured. "She should not have won that." Dr. Vizik did not look away from the battlefield. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. But she did. The corridors of the Galactic Union's Central Command Station pulsed with frantic energy. Rumors of the human combat trials had spread beyond the closed circles of military strategists and scientists. What had been meant as a controlled study of human resilience had become something far more significant. A realization that sent shockwaves through the most powerful factions in the galaxy. Commander Kavek sat at the edge of a long war table, his claws drumming against the smooth metallic surface. The chamber was dimly lit, a security measure to prevent external surveillance from capturing anything beyond shadows and silhouettes. The secrecy was necessary. The information they were about to discuss could not reach the public, not yet. Across from him sat General Orrex, his exoskeletal plates reflecting the dim glow of the holographic display in front of them. He had remained silent since arriving, his mandibles twitching occasionally in deep thought. To his right, the Union's lead intelligence officer, a reptilian Wysara named Counselor Shalvek, observed the room with narrowed eyes. The chamber door hissed open, and Dr. Vezik entered with measured steps, his long fingers gripping a data tablet. He did not sit. He did not need to. The urgency in his expression told them all that whatever he had come to report would not be easy to hear. Kavax exhaled sharply. "Tell us." Dr. Vezik activated the holographic display, and streams of combat data, physiological analysis, and psychological reports materialized in the air. The results of the human combat trials have now been fully assessed. There is no other way to put this. Our initial estimates of human combat resilience were catastrophically incorrect. No one spoke, he continued. We believed, based on prior observations, that human endurance was remarkable. We did not understand what that truly meant until we witnessed direct engagements against high-tier warriors. His elongated fingers tapped a section of the data, pulling up biometric readings. Sergeant Vasquez sustained injuries that should have induced neural shock. Instead, her adrenaline levels spiked beyond what we had previously recorded in any known species. Rather than shut down, her system adapted, her pain receptors dampened, and her aggression increased. The mandibles clicked once. "You are telling us that humans, when pushed to extreme conditions, become more dangerous?" Dr. Vezik's expression remained unreadable. "That is exactly what I am telling you." Counselor Shalvek leaned forward, his yellow eyes narrowing. "How long can they sustain this state?" Dr. Vezik hesitated before answering. "We do not know." The silence in the room became heavier. Kevix clenched his jaw, his mind racing through tactical implications. "There has to be a limit." Dr. Vezik nodded. "There is. But it is not a biological one. It is a structural one. Eventually, their bodies sustain enough damage that they physically collapse. But unlike other species, their survival instinct does not force them to retreat. They fight until there is nothing left." Or Rex exhaled, his exoskeletal plates shifting uneasily. "That is not how war works. That is not how any species fights." Dr. Vezik turned his gaze toward him. "It is how humans fight." The weight of that statement pressed against every being in the room. Counselor Shalvek was the first to break the silence. "This information cannot become public knowledge. If the wrong factions learn about this, they will either see humans as an asset to exploit or a threat to eliminate." His voice was measured, but there was no mistaking the underlying tension. Kivek shook his head. We cannot contain this forever. Rumors are already spreading, and you know what happens when High Command tries to suppress information. It makes people more desperate to uncover the truth. Oryx grunted in reluctant agreement. There is already unease among the warrior factions. The Vorka are demanding an explanation for their champion's defeat. Other species are beginning to ask questions about human physiology. We will not be able to keep this a secret for long. Dr. Vezek tapped on his data tablet, pulling up a new section of reports. There is more. We analyzed historical battle records from human conflicts prior to their integration into the Union. This pattern is not new. It has always been part of their warfare. Their greatest victories have come not from superior technology, but from their refusal to surrender, even in situations that should have been unwinnable. Kavek's claws tightened against the table. They do not break. Dr. Vezek inclined his head. Not in the way other species do. Counselor Shalvek inhaled slowly. Then we must shift our approach. Humanity is not an anomaly. It is a warning. Or, Rex straightened, his mandibles clicking in thought. A warning to whom? Shalvek's gaze darkened. To anyone who thinks of waging war against them. The room fell into another heavy silence. The Union had spent centuries maintaining galactic balance, ensuring that no single species dominated through brute force. They had carefully crafted strategies for dealing with warlike civilizations, guiding them toward diplomacy, ensuring conflicts were managed rather than escalated. But now they were faced with something new, something unpredictable. Humans did not seek war, they did not strive for conquest, but if they were forced into battle, if they were given no choice, they would not stop. The implications of that realization stretched far beyond military concerns. Kavex finally leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. We need to decide how we handle this. Oryx exhaled sharply. The Vorka will not let this go. Their warrior caste thrives on dominance, and they have just been humiliated in front of the entire Union. Counselor Shalvek nodded, and the Katrax Dominion will see this as an opportunity. They are always looking for an excuse to expand their influence. If they believe humanity is a threat, they will act. Kalvek's expression darkened. If the Dominion pushes for war, Dr. Vezek finished the thought for him, then they will be making the greatest mistake in the history of this galaxy. The silence stretched long and deep. For the first time in centuries, the Union was faced with a variable it could not control, a species that defied conventional logic. A force that, once unleashed, could not be stopped, and the galaxy was beginning to realize it. Kavik sighed and rose from his chair. We need to convene an emergency session with the Union High Council. His voice was firm, but there was a weight behind it, as if he already knew what was coming. Borex stood as well, his mandibles tightening. And what will you recommend? Kavix met his gaze. That we make sure humanity never finds a reason to fight us. No one disagreed. As the meeting adjourned, the officers filed out one by one, their minds clouded with a realization they could not ignore. Fear had begun to spread among the stars, and for the first time the Galactic Union was not afraid of conquest. It was afraid of what would happen if humanity was ever pushed too far. The emergency session of the Galactic Union High Council was held in the largest chamber of the capital station, a colossal structure orbiting the star at the heart of Union-controlled space. Every major species was represented, their diplomats, generals, and intelligence officers seated in tiered rows that arched around the central podium. The air carried the weight of unspoken fear, an unfamiliar presence among the seasoned politicians and war leaders who prided themselves on their control over galactic affairs. Commander Kavik stood at the center of the room, his claws folded behind his back, his sharp gaze scanning the faces before him. He had spoken before the council countless times, but never under circumstances like these. Never with the knowledge that what he said next could determine the future of interstellar relations and perhaps the fate of the Union itself. Dr. Vezek stood beside him, his posture rigid as he prepared to present the final report. Across the chamber, General Orcs loomed over his station, his mandibles clicking in agitation. Counselor Shalvek sat in silence, his reptilian eyes narrowed in contemplation. The Supreme Speaker of the Union, a towering being from the ancient Verkai race, tapped the metal floor with his staff, calling the session to order. His voice resonated through the chamber, calm yet firm. We have gathered here today to address the findings of the human combat trials and the implications they bring to the Union's future policies. Commander Kavix, present your report. Kavix straightened. Honorable members of the Council, the data we have gathered is irrefutable. Humanity does not adhere to conventional combat limitations. We have witnessed it firsthand in controlled engagements, and we have verified it through historical analysis of their past conflicts. Humans do not stop fighting. Their biological and psychological composition allows them to override pain, fear, and even self-preservation instincts in pursuit of victory. A murmur spread through the chamber. Some of the older council members exchanged uneasy glances. Others remained still, waiting for him to continue. Dr. Vazik activated the holographic display, bringing up detailed physiological scans and battle footage from the trials. These findings are not anomalies. Lieutenant Perry and Sergeant Vasquez are not exceptions. Every human we have studied possesses this capability to some extent. They endure beyond. A Threxian diplomat, his bioluminescent eyes narrowing, leaned forward. Are you suggesting that humans are incapable of surrender? Dr. Vezik shook his head. No. Humans are capable of surrender, but they rarely choose it. The chamber grew colder with the weight of that statement. Counselor Shalvik finally spoke, his voice calm but edged with tension. Then the question before us is simple. How do we ensure that we never find ourselves in a war against them? General Orex clicked his mandibles, his irritation barely concealed. There is only one way to guarantee that. We must preemptively neutralize the threat. A hush fell over the room. The Supreme Speaker tilted his head. You are suggesting military action? Orex met his gaze without hesitation. If we delay, we risk humanity growing more powerful. Right now they are still integrating into the Union, still finding their place in galactic politics. If we act quickly, we can contain their influence before it is too late. Kavex's claws dug slightly into his palm, but his voice remained measured. Do you truly believe that would succeed? Orex's mandibles twitched. We outnumber them. Our technology surpasses theirs. Kavak stepped forward, his voice low but carrying enough weight to silence the chamber. And yet, their history tells us that numbers and technology do not win wars against them. He gestured toward the holographic display. How many times have we seen this pattern? How many times have superior forces tried to break them, only to be ground into dust by their sheer refusal to accept defeat? Even if we struck first, even if we crushed them in the opening battles, they would not stop. They would never stop. Orex's silence was answer enough. The Supreme Speaker turned his gaze toward Kavax. If not war, then what? Kavax took a slow breath. Coexistence. A ripple of unrest passed through the chamber. Some scoffed. Others leaned forward, intrigued. Kavax continued. The Union has survived because we do not let wars define us. We have integrated countless species, some violent, some unpredictable. We do not conquer them, we guide them. And now, we must do the same with humanity. The Threxian diplomat frowned. And if that fails, Kavak's gaze hardened. Then we make sure they never have a reason to see us as enemies. A long silence followed. The Supreme Speaker exhaled, the sound deep and ancient. Then, the course is set. We will not act in hostility toward humanity. Instead, we will seek to strengthen our alliance with them, to integrate them fully into the Union systems. We will make them our allies, not our enemies. General Orrex said nothing, but the tension in his stance did not fade. He understood, just as everyone in the room did, that the Union had no better alternative. Councillor Shalvek nodded. Then we must proceed carefully. If we wish to keep humanity on our side, we must ensure that they never have a reason to doubt our intentions. The Supreme Speaker tapped his staff once more. The decision has been made. Humanity is not to be treated as a threat. They are to be treated as an equal force within the Union. This council is adjourned. One by one, the council members stood and began to leave, their thoughts heavy with the weight of the choice they had made. Kavex remained seated for a long moment, staring at the empty holographic display. He had fought in countless battles, advised in countless conflicts. He had seen war, brutality, and destruction. But for the first time, he felt something different. Relief. The Union had made the right choice. Because in the end, humanity had never been a threat. It had been a warning. And now, the galaxy would listen.